Per usual, everything on this channel is for educational purposes only and is not intended as financial advice. It's Wednesday. Let's take a look at some alts, see what we can see. And my general expectations here, we're not going to see much of anything in September, most likely. We're getting plus or minus 5% in a day-ish, in a week maybe. You know, there's nothing really spectacular here. I do not see anything I'm confident enough to size up on, to call out, to trade. That's the video, folks. Thanks for coming. No, I'm kidding, but we'll take a look at everything. There's some stuff I would have alerts on, like I have alerts on. We'll see if any of that hits or not. BTC sets the tone. It's still in the daily cloud. Gold's still breaking out. That sets the eventual tone for liquidity working its way into crypto. So we're at 112 here. We were at 109 the other day. You know, this is part of the game. There's a reason. If you pull up any chart and you're in the cloud on the daily, it's a no trade zone generally. Best case, you can get a trade-off as you're going from one edge of the cloud to the other, the edge-to-edge trade as you're transitioning. But just pulling this up, this is neutral. It's nothing. It's a range. A few people were asking me, okay, like let's say you want to short this. What do? You could do an active short strategy by DCAing into a short position. Anything below the Kijun should act as your stop loss for a short. But even there, am I confident enough personally to do that? No, like who knows, right? Ideally, best case scenario, you always get a very tight move into the Kijun before the move lower. And again, February, this is like textbook, edge-to-edge stuff that you'd want to see every time. A failure to break out, a failure to break the cloud, a failure to break the Kijun, a new lower low, all this stuff is great. There's also tight Bollinger Bands here that we're breaking down. So this is kind of the ideal setup for losing momentum on the short side. You know, here it's like, yeah, we're neutral, but are we bearish enough to go short? I don't know. I don't really think so. Probably not yet. I just don't feel comfortable being long either. So that's as neutral can be. Dominance here still below the cloud. Maybe this pulls up a little bit. Maybe it doesn't. I doubt it goes back above the cloud to like 64%. This probably just chops around with everything else. We're seeing some bleed from from alts into BTC. We're seeing alts generally just sort of bleed lower. I just don't think there's anything to really do here on the crypto side, especially in alt land. And so long as dominance doesn't break above like 62, I think alts may continue to see a tailwind sometime in Q4. But today, you know, is there really anything to do again? I don't see it. We're still above the cloud on total 2 over BTC. And the longer this can stay here, the better. Similar to ETH. ETH stayed above the cloud and the USD pair for a long time. ETH BTC pair as well. Before eventually breaking up. The longer you can hold above support, the better. The longer it consolidate, the better. Maybe you get some sort of flag pennant situation here. But this is certainly a better time to be long alts than it was in any point in the past 3 years. And it's just the same as dominance. You know, dominance said, okay, you know, see you later altcoins for years and years and years. Total 2 looks a lot like ETH, which is just sort of ho-hum here. Is there anything to do? I don't see it. Again, I don't see setups here, short time frame, long time frame. I just don't see it. There could be a little breakout here to play if you want. It's just, again, if BTC is neutral sideways, if legacy markets broadly are kind of neutral sideways all over the place, I don't see a great reason to take a bunch of trades here on alts. I just don't. Individually, there may be some opportunities, but collectively, I just don't see it. Looking at the stablecoins, Tether and USDC, USDC has minted a bunch, which is good. Eventually, this should work its way into alts. Tether also continues to mint and print. Similar to global liquidity, you know, if global liquidity was going down, rates were going up, stablecoin issuance was going down, people were pulling money out of the ecosystem. These are all very bearish things for liquidity. We're not seeing that. We're seeing the opposite of that. So I think it makes more sense to stay optimistic, to stay with a bullish mindset until that stuff turns a corner, or at least until the market starts to think that's going to turn the corner. We're not seeing any of that at all. We're seeing regulatory clarity every day. We're seeing more products spun up every day. And we're seeing the pendulum just swing from equities for a long period of time since April, and now it's going a little bit into gold, and then it may swing back into equities, crypto in Q4. It's just hard to be bearish seeing liquidity globally and liquidity coming into the crypto ecosystem. One thing I looked at today that I thought was pretty interesting, if we look at total 2, total 3, ETH, WGMI, which is the mining ETF, and IWM, all of these except one, that's Coinbase, all these except one, Coin, is pretty much tracking 1-to-1. Now, coin broke out before ETH did in June. ETH, this red line here. So it was way ahead of the game as far as breaking out. Now here it's very disconnected. So the question is there value in coin here relative to the group? Is this going to pull up with the group? Is the group going to pull down to coin? Previously, coin was the leader. It was kind of a laggard back here. I don't see anything that's compelling enough to say, oh man, look at this great coin setup, even individually, which we'll get to. It just looks like coin is much, much, much weaker than the rest of the group, despite holding a pretty tight correlation for the past, 2-3 years, even since the coin IPO. So something weird going on here with coin relative to the group. Collectively, alts in crypto, low caps in traditional markets have been doing fairly well. So to see coin kind of selling off here, maybe hints at some idiosyncratic issues with coin individually. Looking at the chart itself, what's the trade? Buy, sell, or hold? Bullish, neutral, bearish? It's certainly neutral. It's in the cloud. The read here could be a descending triangle, bear flag. You've got a huge range. From a trend trader's perspective, this is a nightmare because you've got a expanding, broadening wedge and you're falling back into the range. That's a zero for me. That's a donut. Nothing to do. I like this in May, June above the cloud. I like this Q4 above the cloud. But here, I see nothing. I see nothing to do. Huge range, no trend, no trade. Galaxy, in a similar vein, despite setting up really, really nicely, kind of along with some of these others that set up really, really nicely and went nowhere. Maybe they jumped the gun. In the moment here, Galaxy also is a no trade, just nothing to do. It's back in the cloud. This may inverted head and shoulders out. This may break out again, and then I'll love it. But where we sit here, back in the range, very tough to assume anything that this is going to keep going. I just see a bunch of nothing here. Nothing to do on that one. And MSTR continues to look worse and worse, falling further below the cloud today. A breakdown of the flag, falling lower today. If the S&P 500 inclusion was trying to get priced in, this is a poor way to do it. Everybody's going to be surprised, basically, if they get included. It doesn't appear as though the market believes it will get included. That doesn't mean it won't. It just means, you'd think it'd be trading a little bit better if people were betting on that. It makes more sense to just wait and see what happens, because right here, there's absolutely zero evidence, as it's sitting on lows, to me, to jump into this. So again, I said this over and over. I don't care about MSTR from 330 to 400. I like it from 420 to 700. So I think I can time this a little bit better and I can wait. I just don't think there's anything to do on MSTR. SMLR, I like to check some of these every once in a while. It's in the alt bucket, right? These are treasury companies. This thing has continued to trade miserably. It has continued to range violently up and down and has been a trend trader's nightmare. This is on the wall of what not to look for when you're trying to find a trend trade, because this has continuously just been ugly. Ugly, ugly, ugly. Back in the multi-year range, never a good sign if you're looking for a trend to see this. All the resistance levels are random and variable, jagged. Maybe eventually this pulls up. I like it above 50, but down here, it's just not for me. As we get onto the ETH, treasury companies BMNR pulled up a little bit today. Still below the 30-minute cloud, and I keep saying this, if you're bullish, if you're really bullish, it shouldn't be hard to break out on low time frames. It did that in August. That's when ETH started to break out. ETH does continue here, and I'm totally wrong, and it just keeps going to 8K. BMNR is going to be a great play. So if you think that's the case, BMNR might be the treasury company for you. I don't know. But on the 30-minute, it isn't quite there yet. It's tried to pull into the cloud, failed, broke back down. It may do the same again. It may break out. I don't know. But above 49, I like it a lot more. And I especially don't like it if you think ETH is just going to be flat and ranging. SBET has had even more of a miserable time just continuing to pull lower here. Certainly not bullish, and has almost given back everything, at least halfway, since that breakout in July. BMNR would have quite a ways to go here to get back to that level. Some of this, I'm sure, is the pipe selling. It kind of looks like TWAP selling a little bit, but it doesn't help that ETH isn't screaming bullish. And if there's no momentum on the 1x asset on the spot side, there's certainly going to be less momentum on the 2x side. And then that's where you get sort of this pseudo volatility drag where you get continuous selling and just bleed in general. ETH isn't bearish here. It's just, what's the trade? It's already up X% since April, X% since July. Below the Tenkin, trying to start to lose support again, potentially here on the Williams fractals that already lost the support in August. I'll show the Nvidia chart in a second, but what you're looking for is a key June bounce. So that's 3650-ish. It could hit that level and keep going up, right? Like that would be the trend expectation, is we get a little mean reversion and then we keep going. But up here, it's not quite for me price-wise. Doesn't mean I'm going to be correct. Just isn't for me. And if we look at Nvidia as an example of what to look for, not necessarily in price action, but just relative to the cloud, this is getting close to returning to the mean there on the key June. It also is setting up for potential bearish edge-to-edge move lower. And this would be something similar to look for on ETH down the road, potentially later on in September. But if the high flyers start to roll over, it's going to be harder probably for things like ETH to continue. So you don't want this breaking down if you're long ETH. One thing you can look for on the cloud is something like this. This was Nvidia early 2024. You get the breakout, you're just riding above the Tenkin, testing the Tenkin, then you roll over a little bit, then you stay below the Tenkin for a period of time, then you test the Kijun, then you test the cloud, then you get a bullish TK recross. And in ETH's equivalent, this would probably be like into November potentially. You get a pretty decent case for an inverted head and shoulders here, along with a bullish TK recross price above cloud. If at any point you see this on anything, that's usually the most bullish signal you can get on the cloud, aside from vanilla Kumo breakout. Now, if we don't get that, we could also get this, which again is Nvidia, just as an example, where we were setting up for a head and shoulders. We probably won't get that on ETH necessarily, but setting up for a multi-month head and shoulders, and then we just went higher anyway. We made our way through the cloud, up and down, made our way, making a higher high on the right shoulder, and then stayed above the cloud for an extended period of time. So all that is just to say, I wouldn't expect ETH to magically pop up here without some consolidation first. That's all. Is that too much to ask? Like if you're bullish, you should be able to consolidate and recover. It doesn't need to be a 54x move from here on ETH, but I think it's going to be hard to move this right out of the gate. And for the rest of these alts, I really don't think there's much to do. Sol continues to slowly bleed up, which is good. It kind of like takes one giant step forward and then a bunch of tiny steps back over and over again. Still looks good for continuation. Still looks okay. Doesn't look overbought. Quietly just slowly moving up there. So that's good to see. Probably an all-time high retest, I'd imagine, by the end of the year. Ripple kind of is an example of everything. It just has bled back here. Maybe it's a falling wedge. Maybe it isn't. It's too wishy-washy. The cloud says it's neutral again. Really nothing to say or do here on Ripple. Back in the range. That's never what you want to see as a trend trader. Say back in the range. Is this a head and shoulders? Maybe. Will this break down? Maybe. What confidence level would you give a trade like this to the long side? 0 for me. So you can let me know if I'm wrong. I just don't see anything to do. H-bar, same deal, similar to Ripple. Pulled back below the cloud, bearish TK cross. Just really nothing to do until it's above the diagonal line. I mean, that's really just as simple as it gets. Really not seeing anything active there. Curve, more of a falling wedge. Maybe there's some sort of curving diagonal you could think about here as a resistance level. But if it's below the cloud, it's just hard for me to take it seriously to the long side. So nothing there for me. LTC's got to be a high time frame, long-term idea. If you think there's a X%, let's say there's a 40% chance that this goes to 250, maybe you allocate into some of that and you just sit there and you wait. Your stop loss is, I don't know, 75, right? You just say, you know what? I want to be in the room where it happens. If it happens, I'm going to start getting myself situated and figure it out later. Add at 125, add at 130, something like that. You know, you can map out a trade plan for multi-month idea, but there's certainly nothing imminent here that's screaming, oh man, what a great setup. Link, like a lot of the leaders, just sort of doing a bunch of nothing, pulling back, you know, hard to say on high time frames what is going on here. Just nothing. Not bearish, but it's not trending as hard as it was. So is there really anything to do? I don't think so. Algo, similar to most of these, below a diag, below the cloud. Pretty easy to see. Just set an alert at, 26.5. Call it a day. See if it can get above that level. ENA has had a nice couple bounces here. I don't love it here as somebody who was buying, back here. And this whole time I was buying, it doesn't appeal to me until you get the cloud reset, which you may see on ENA before ETH, the way this looks. But I just don't see anything here today on that one. Aave, maybe the chart of the video. Maybe. The Aave guy who was screaming at me on stream, asking me to look at the chart. the setup is there. The issue is similar to Sol. You take a couple steps back or forward, then you give it all back. Forward, give it all back. Forward, give it all back. That has resulted in a series of higher highs and a series of higher lows. That is a win. So from a day-to-day perspective, it's pretty ugly, but a multi-month perspective, it has continued to move higher. You could maybe argue a cup and handle on this. I don't see a problem with that. And we're getting closer to an eventual breakout. It was tried to break out a couple weeks ago or a week ago, pulled back. Of all the charts, at the very least, this is sitting at a resistance level and it's made a series of higher lows. So that is a win from a chart perspective. A lot of people super crowded to me in the hype trade. And if you're on a long-term fundamental plan, don't listen to me on technicals here on short-term, but this is bullish. It's just been very, very rangy. Hasn't had a history of doing much of anything since the breakout in May. Similar to Sol, similar to Aave. Anything it's gained, it's sort of given all back. Hasn't had a continuous series of higher highs, has made a series of higher lows. So, it looks better than most of these charts, but that's not really great. I would expect this to do very, very well if everything else does well in Q4. This potentially may 2x from here. It's just how much downside do you want to eat? Do you want to worry about a reversal or not? What's your stop loss? Do you care, right? I just don't see a great setup here on hype. ARB tried to break out a few times, broke back down, sitting at resistance. Again, I don't hate it if you're patient. Or if you're expecting a move today, you might have an issue in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, this still looks good. It's consolidating at highs. I don't hate it for an eventual move higher. AVAX, also to me, one of the better looking charts. It is on the right side of resistance, trying to break out, consolidating for a very, very long time here. Has gone nowhere, has continued to just go sideways. And it looks like an ascending triangle. It looks like a lot of these charts in Legacy that have been breaking out as you'd expect. One caution here is that it's just sort of towards the end of the line. So it's kind of got to move soon here from a technical perspective. And I would expect this to move higher just based on how this looks. And relative to everything else, relative to ETH, if there's an AVAX ETH pair, I'm sure there is. Should we pull it up? Let's take a look. Just because, there's not much else going on. Honestly, I wish there was. Here's an AVAX ETH pair. If you look on the daily, a little bit of a bottom trying. You can see ETH strength on a relative basis. So you could always set some alerts down the line here in the cloud as you make your way through the cloud. Hope to catch outperformance relative to ETH on an edge-to-edge trade, something like that. Nothing screaming super, super hard today, but sure, potential. The potential is there. The potential is definitely there. ADA tried to break out a couple times, hasn't. SWE keeps giving everything back. Not exactly where you want it from an entry perspective, in my opinion. Again, kind of getting to the end of the line there on the triangle. INJ, same deal. It's looked okay. It's very, very tightly consolidated here, but it needs to start to pull up here pretty soon. Anything above 15.5 is probably go time. DYDX, same deal. Wanted to break out a couple times, just got smacked down over and over again. I still like the possibility of this working out as expected. Matic also quietly one of the better looking charts here, has started to hold highs for the first time in months, and that's a very, very good sign. It's just hard to long the alts way, way down the market cap list if you're not bullish on the high caps. But hey, this could be a time when low caps start to outperform. Wormhole W tried to break out like everything else, and then got smacked down. Just nothing to do here at the moment for me. I like higher highs on all this stuff. I like breaking resistance and all this stuff. Ideally, it doesn't happen all in the same day, so I can rotate around. Ondo, just ranging. Really nothing to say or do. Ton in this triangle, ranging. Nothing to say or do. And it's still just a waiting game across the board. Near, puking lower. Nothing really to say or do. Aptos, same deal. Just sort of drifting lower slowly. And just not a lot of excitement across the board. But one day we will have a video on this channel for alts about breakouts, and we'll be just like Oprah Winfrey giving out free cars. You're a breakout, and you're a breakout, and you're a breakout. But in order to catch that as it's happening, you need to set alerts, right? You need to be just aware of where the key levels are. So I like any horizontal, any diagonal on any of these charts. That just makes sense. Flow is another one. Why is flow looking decent here? I have no idea, but it looks pretty good. So overall, just not much to do for me on the trend side. And we have a dozen breakouts just waiting in the wings. That's all I got for this one. Give me a like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.